Hi, for this video, I am going to be presenting on the concept of nurture when debating nature versus nurture and how nurture is more influential in development than nature. Socioeconomic status can take on a huge role influencing a child's development. One of the ways that this can be seen is through language development, specifically how many words a child has acquired by age 2. Socioeconomic status can play a role in the language environment the child grows up in, and therefore can influence how many words these children learn. One factor is richness of vocabulary, which is less common in a low SES household because the degree of education of the parents is lower, and therefore they tend to have a less rich vocabulary themselves. And in addition, in a lower socioeconomic status household, there's a limited amount of time because parents often work more, which means there's limited parent-child conversation, leaving the children with therefore less time to learn language. The lack of money and time leads to less reading from books, as well as less books because of financial difficulties, which can lead to a deficit in emergent literacy. All these environmental factors that come with a low SES status can lead children from a lower status to acquire 30% less words by age 2, which can set these children up to fall behind in language development. In addition, culture and schooling, both of which are environmental or nurture factors, can impact the age of acquiring Piagetian tasks. There's research done in Hausa, Nigeria, which had small settlements and little schooling in the environment. Understanding the conservation of mass usually happens around age 7. However, due to the lack of schooling, most children were unable to understand conservation of mass until they were around 11 years old, which is about 4 years later. This shows that the environment and living area of a child, as well as schooling, can very much affect and influence cognitive development. In addition to affecting language and cognitive development, the environment and culture can play a role in affecting social and emotional development. One of the ways this is seen is through the development of self-conscious emotions, which usually appear in the second year of life. Chinese and Japanese culture promote an interdependent self, and calling attention to an individual's success evokes embarrassment and self-effacement from a young child. This is very much different from a child in Western culture, which is more individualistic, and the child would feel pride when calling individual attention to individual success. This shows that self-conscious emotions develop differently and are different. The emotions and reactions to certain situations are not universal, but rather are variable and dependent on the culture of one growing up. In addition, environmental factors such as socioeconomic status can affect attachment styles, which are very important in emotional development. Children in a low SES household tend to move from one insecure attachment style to another, and in addition to SES, culture can also affect these attachment styles. For example, in Germany, independence is valued, and many German babies have avoidant attachment. However, in Japan, infants rarely show any type of avoidant attachment because culturally, Japanese mothers rarely ever leave their babies in the care of someone else. Finally, the environment a child grows up in can affect both physical and motor development as well. For example, there are many cultural variations in motor development, depending on if sitting, walking, and crawling is encouraged. For example, research done in Iranian orphanages where babies would spend all their time on their backs and were deprived of surroundings that would encourage development of motor skills showed that orphans did not move on their own until 2 years of age, and by 3 or 4 of age, only about 15% of these orphans could even walk. On the other end of the spectrum, in Kenya and Jamaica, babies learn to hold their heads up, sit alone, and walk considerably more early than North American babies. And this is because babies are raised in a culture where early motor maturity is emphasized, as well as practicing particular physical exercises to stimulate a particular skill, such as sitting up. In addition, physical development can be highly influenced by the environment and factors such as nutrition. Children living in poverty or lower SES are at risk for serious and prolonged malnutrition. And prolonged malnutrition can lead to delayed physical growth, impaired motor coordination, inattention, and low IQ, which put children at risk for doing poorly in school. These physical changes can result in permanent physical or mental damage. And in conclusion, as you can see, the environment can really affect development, whether it be language, richness of vocabulary, ability to do conservation of mass, the Piagetian task. It can also affect self-conscious emotions and physical development and motor coordination. The environment overall plays a bigger role in development than nature. So